Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. With the reveal of Alliance Insight, we've been given what seems to be the final installment of the Sinful Spoils storyline. After Diabellze delivered Poplar to the great darkness that resides within the corrupted forest, Diabellstar teamed up with the Goblin bikers to make haste and save them from the clutches of evil. The power of Azamina expanded without bounds, and now the final battle is upon us. Gather your sins and begin to bear them in one final glorious confrontation with the Alliance Insight Sinful Spoils lore cards. Explained. Today's episode is possible thanks to viewers like you, as well as my patrons. If you like what I do here, I would super appreciate it if you'd subscribe to help us reach another wonderful milestone video, and if you want to support me directly while getting some awesome benefits, check out the link to my Patreon in the description below. Now, we normally try to section off the different support into their own categories to keep things sorted out, but because we've reached peak levels of brandedization, where the different themes have meshed and combined together, we'll just be covering them all in my usual order altogether. So keep an eye out for all the different interactions that these cards have, because these are some doozies. Diabellstar, the Sin Adjudicator, is a level 8 Dark Fiend monster with 2500 attack and 2100 defense that is always treated as a Sinful Spoils card. You can banish one spell card and one trap card from your hand and or grave to special summon this card from your hand or grave. And as a quick effect, you can pay half your life points, then target a card your opponent controls and destroy it. Then, if another Diabellze monster card is on the field, you can special summon an illusion or spellcaster tuner synchro monster from your extra deck, giving you some overlap with White Forest. But there is a bit of a conflict here. Most of the White Forest spell and trap cards have ways to reset themselves from the graveyard when sent there, and they're gonna have a tough time doing that if you banish them. But with all the great non-engine cards in the game, you should be able to find some good fodder to help this hit the field. And because it can be summoned from the hand or graveyard, this is almost always going to be a threat. Its removal effect is pretty risky, having to give up half your life points to do it, but sometimes the right pop at the right time can change the tide of battle. And you might even get a free monster out of it. Who could pass up that? Currently, we only have 5 targets for this effect, but the only ones that are really worthwhile are the White Forest ones. Summon Silvera to hit your opponent with a board-wide Book of Moon, or grab Ursiella to grab any White Forest or light spellcaster that you like. There won't be any synchro summoning happening afterwards, since 8 plus 6 is a level beyond our reckoning, but that just means they're going to work well with other non-tuners that we field. This card is chock full of value, and all you had to do to get it was perform some Spirit Digivolution with her Sinful Spoils. Honestly, wish we'd done that sooner. That would have solved a lot of problems. Diabellze the White Witch is a level 8 light illusion monster with 2500 attack and 2100 defense that is always treated as a White Forest card. Monsters you control can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects while you control 2 or more Diabellze monsters, and you can send a spell or trap card from your hand or field to the grave to special summon this card from your hand. And if this card is normal or special summoned, you can send a Sinful Spoils or Diabellze card from your deck to the grave. And by doing that, you can send Sin Adjudicator to the grave to set up its summon. If you have another spell or trap card in the graveyard to complement the one that you pitched to summon Diabellze, you can bring Adjudicator out, which will then turn Diabellze's effect destruction protection online. And Adjudicator's pop now has that bonus summon. And if you want to get really cheeky, you've got everything you need for a rank 8 summon. Alternatively, if the card you pitched was one of those White Forest ones we mentioned earlier, you can set it back to your field, giving you a big body for free. Now, don't get me wrong, Diabellze was already pretty strong while harnessing the power of Toxic Yuri, but now that we've embraced the light of Wholesome Yuri, nothing will stand in their way. Just to ignore the fact that Wholesome Yuri involves Diabellze shoving Diabellstar into the grave so she can claw herself out again. That's normal. Women be putting each other in the grave, I don't know what to tell you. That's basically how all the Mayakashi stuff happens. Azamina is a level 12 light illusion fusion monster with 4000 attack and defense, requiring Queen Azamina and a fusion or synchro monster as material. And it must first be either fusion summoned or special summoned from the extra deck by tributing a copy of Saint Azamina that you control and a face-up monster your opponent controls. It can't be destroyed by card effects, and each time your opponent activates a card or effect, all monsters your opponent currently controls lose 500 attack immediately after it resolves. Also, your opponent can't activate the effects of monsters with 0 attack. Wow, are they just incapable of printing a bad Azamina card, this fusion is going ballistic. For those of you who didn't catch the Supreme Darkness lore update video, first off, go watch that! Your local lore junkie has to eat. And second, Saint Azamina is a fusion introduced in that set that, when summoned, got you another free Azamina from your deck or extra deck so long as it was level 9 or below. And this extends past that, trading out Saint's strange targeting disabling and battle damage reflection for effect destruction protection, an actual attack stat, stacking an attack debuff that eventually shuts off effects, oh, and kaijuing your opponent. Yeah, tributing an opponent's face-up monster for this is one of the most comprehensive ways to answer a threat, and unlike playing an actual kaiju, you aren't giving your opponent anything for the privilege. You're not even playing a main deck brick for it. And that's only one way you can bring this out. With a named material and a pretty broad category of material as the fusion recipe, this is another nasty super polymerization outlet, using either the actual Queen Azamina or a fusion substitute, since the effect doesn't say it has to be made with Queen Azamina. And as an Azamina monster, you can just summon this from your extra deck by feeding 3 Sinful Spoils cards to one of your Azamina summoning effects. Though, at that point, you might as well just spend 2 to get Saint Azamina and then tribute up. This is going to be an annoying boss monster for some time to come, and is going to be added to the big pile of things with horns that have big lore implications. It may be made of entirely different material, it may not look entirely the same, and it's certainly not a Star God monster, but you better believe that none of that is getting in the way of me side-eyeing it like the next coming of Sophia. Everything is dual terminal, you hear me? Mystic Mystery of the White Forest is a level 4 Light Illusion Synchro Tuner monster with 700 attack and 2000 defense, requiring generic material. If this card is special summoned, you can target 2 White Forest monsters in your grave and place them face up in their owner spell and trap zones as continuous spells. And during your opponent's main phase, you can, as a quick effect, immediately after this effect resolves, synchro summon using this card that you control. Ah, Poplar's final form has been unveiled, and it's a pretty tricky one. This makes for the third valid summon off of Sin Adjudicator's effect, filling up your back row with White Forest monsters while giving you access to level 12 synchros, one of which is going to be very relevant in just a second. The White Forests themselves don't thrive so much being in the back row, that's more of a Snake Eye thing, but we do have a few effects we could use to help pop them out of the back row from across the entire span of the lore that we've seen so far. Heck, at the very least, putting 2 monsters in your back row gives you all the material you need to, and I can't believe this is a sentence I get to say, contact fuse using your continuous spell monsters for Snake Eye's Doomed Dragon. And as is typical for Synchro Tuner monsters, it has a quick sync effect, which means this also just combos with most on-summon effects of Synchro monsters, even our own White Forest Synchros. I mean, we've already talked about how busted Silvera can be when you hit your opponent with it at your leisure. This is another fairly useful tool that goes into your toolbox that can accomplish some zany things as you build up your board without the card itself being too wild. Though I wonder how Poplar feels about having its Snake Eye citizenship revoked and replaced with another eye-coded aesthetic. Kind of feels like we're just passing this little guy around for the fun of it. Better than whatever's going on with loot over in Magic the Gathering though, sheesh. Outlaws of Thunder Junction isn't even a year old and they're already plastering loot all over everything like it's their next Pikachu, good grief. Snake Eye's Execute Dragon is a level 12 Fire Dragon Synchro monster with 3000 attack and 2500 defense, requiring generic material. During the main phase, as a quick effect, you can target a face-up monster on the field or in either grave and place it face up in its owner's spell and trap zone as a continuous spell card. Also, this card can't use this effect next turn, giving it a conspicuously Mirror Jade-esque feeling. Also, during the battle phase, as a quick effect, you can target 2 cards on the field, a monster and a continuous spell card, and destroy them. Now, the way this is formatted, you might think you have to destroy a card on both sides of the field, but Scrap Dragon, this is not. If your opponent has both a continuous spell and a monster, you can take out both, and Execute Dragon comes with the tools to burden your opponent with the spell part. Don't worry, you can generally count on your opponent to provide the rest, and because of this, combined with its generic material requirements, this can see play in basically anything that has the level 12 synchro access. True, this does some good work in Snake Eye, populating the back row with on-theme monsters like Flamberge so we can pop them and convert it into even more material, but what deck doesn't like the idea of non-destruction removal combined with more removal that just so happens to involve destruction? It truly is a force to be reckoned with and is ready to help execute your opponent. in the game. If I'm using this card to execute things outside the game, trust me, the targets are going to be way more political. I would say this card is kind of like the guillotine of monsters, wouldn't you agree? Filius Diabellze is a normal spell card that adds a level 8 or higher Diabellze monster from your deck to your hand, or if only your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon it instead. If this card is banished, you can make all Diabellze monsters you control gain 500 attack. So, because it only hunts down level 8 or higher monsters, the old Diabellstar and Diabellze are off limits. And while this is a blow to all fans of the unhinged Claw Gal, Diabellstar still has Seeker of the Sinful Spoils, so options still overfloweth. But we don't just have to settle for putting it into our hand. This is an absolute bop going second to getting us a free White Witch Diabellze to set up any number of Sinful Spoils plays. Not to mention, this makes for the perfect card to banish for summoning Sin Adjudicator, since this will actually land you a benefit when it's being banished. 2500 is pretty nice for some free bodies, but turning them into 3Ks? Nah, that's putting in some damage. And those aren't the only targets, as this can also tutor or summon Snake Eyes Diabellstar, which has its own host of nonsense it can pull off in Snake Eyes lists. Shame we had to eat the Goblin Biker's Crazy Beast for that though. Guess they didn't go bonkers enough. Oh, that's why they didn't get any new support this set. They're dead! Maybe. Witches of the White Forest is a field spell card that, when activated, lets you add a White Forest monster from your deck to your hand, and if you do, you can't special summon dark monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. The first time each White Forest monster you control would be destroyed by battle each turn, it is not, and you can target a White Forest monster you control, and it's treated as a tuner this turn. Well, it showed up a tad late to the party, but here it is, a field spell we can use to search any member of our theme. From combo starters to extenders, this field spell has you covered, and even helps you out in a lot of corner cases. The lower stats of our monsters make them susceptible to battle destruction, so having a way to keep them safe for a bit is a welcome addition. And while the lines of play just about always include the right mix of tuner and non-tuner to get your game plan off the ground, being able to make a card into a tuner at the drop of a hat really slaps. In fact, this works best in combination not with White Forest, but with Azamina, or should I say, both White Forest and Azamina. The Corrupted LZ makes for a great addition to both themes, as well as a bridge between them, but if we aren't leaning as much on the White Forest half, you're gonna have a hard time getting their effects that trigger when being used as synchro material. But the field spell makes up for that, even though it does actually kind of block you out of summoning Azaminas from the extra deck the turn you use the search effect, so I mean it does have some speed bumps, but it was already going to be tricky getting the two themes to play nice with each other anyway. They're basically sworn enemies. Honestly, I think we're lucky we were even able to get them onto a single card once. Curse of Diabellze is a normal trap card that you can activate if you control 2 or more Diabellze monsters. Send a monster you control to the grave to destroy all face-up cards your opponent controls. And if this card is sent to the graveyard or banished from the hand or deck, you can add a Diabellze spell or trap card from your deck to your hand except a copy of this card. Hell yeah! Add this to the pile of things you get to do once you get the 2 Diabellze together. Now, we can kind of board wipe our opponent. It's also another kind of fantastic option to spend on the summon of Sin Adjudicator, because by banishing Curse, you essentially gain access to every other Diabellze spell or trap card. However, you'll have to banish it from your hand to do it, because it does not trigger if it's banished from the grave. Now, admittedly, that's a pretty shallow pool to search through, but assuming we've already used Filius Diabellze, like the Diabellze and play the Diabellze are still some fantastic options if you're continuing to extend your plays. Heck, you don't even have to banish it. All you have to do is send it from the hand or deck by a card effect, and thankfully we have a lot of tools for that. Foolish Burial Goods just does it directly, but you can also pitch it with either Diabellstar the Black Witch or Diabellze the White Witch. It's such a useful mechanic that honestly, the board wipe is the most blasé thing about it. And given the card art, I think Azamina feels the same way. Like, if you're disintegrating in a pillar of pink flames, you should probably be freaking out a lot more. Sinless Sinful Spoils is a continuous trap card that allows you to activate one of the following effects once per turn. You can either target a Diabellze monster in your grave or banishment and discard a card, and if you do, special summon that monster, or target a face-up monster card in your spell and trap card zone and special summon it. Both of these effects are pretty solid. The Diabellze targets are universally good, with the most prevalent being the Black Witch, so you get that free Sinful Spoils card. And with Mystic Mystery, even White Forest can benefit from the Snake Eyes treatment since since it doesn't care what card you pick to summon from the back row. This means you can technically splash it into any theme that puts monsters in the back row like Centurion and Crystal Beasts, but those themes kind of already have ways to operate under those conditions, so if the themes you splash it with don't have any other forms of synergy, you might want to avoid muddying the waters. Overall, very happy to see this, but boy do I hope the localization does some tweaking here. Like, I know what it was going for, but like, we can't be calling it sinless Sinful Spoils, then all you've got left is spoils. And if there's anything the nerdy internet zeitgeist hates, it's spoilers. Alright, with all the cards out of the way, it's time to talk about the story. And the best thing we can do is recap where we left things off last time. Much of what we saw concerned how all of this began, with the evil of the forest running rampant after a bite was taken from the forbidden fruit. Both the teachers and the matron of the woods were consumed by its corrupting influence, but not before imparting certain gifts to the two disciples. Stellar and Elzette both inherited part of the power of Diabellze, and the mentors were even able to send their souls in the form of Sinful Spoils along with Stellar, who would take the name Diabellstar, wandering the world and gaining strength by seeking Sinful Spoils. Elzette, however, was not so lucky. Without the protection of the Sinful Spoils, she was turned into a puppet of the Azamina, who was made to hurt other witches to add to the forest's growing power. With the assistance of a skeletal dragon, Elzette fought against a practitioner of the magical arts and slew her, but not before this mysterious witch could perform one final act. As she was defeated by a scion of the Azamina, the witch's soul was turned into a Sinful Spoil, which freed Elzette from the clutches of the forest's darkness. Armed with new power and taking on the name Diabellze, the original Sin Keeper made it her mission to track down the means by which the Azamina could be eradicated, no matter what course of action it would take. But this would bode poorly for both disciples. Diabellze absconded with Poplar while leaving Diabellstar languishing in a prison complex, forced to fight off against the Azamina puppets of her past. Not only was the witch that fought Elzette among their ranks, as well as a knightly Azamina tied to the Goblin biker's crazy beast, the shells of both Sylvie and Rusia hunted her down. It was a grueling battle, but one that Diabellstar emerged from victorious. Diabellze's plan sadly did not go as well. Taking Poplar into the heart of the forest, the original Sin Keeper was overpowered and met with a terrible fate, transforming into a warped combination of an Azamina puppet and feral Poplar dragon. Once again, Elzette had returned to the service of the Queen, but this time, Diabellstar would not leave her fellow student behind. Not again. Approaching at full speed, pulled by the mighty crazy beast itself, having gone from wild to completely bonkers, Diabellstar arrived with a flash of steel, severing one of Saint Azamina's vines, as seen in Filius Diabellze. Greek is a language that's cropped up over the past few sets, so it makes sense it would resurface again here. And what is Filius? Friendship, affection, love. Despite their differences, despite their clash, despite the simmering resentment and everything that's come between them over these long, grueling years, they still care for each other. At least enough to wade headfirst into a forest of gnarled vines controlled by an ancient evil. The attack, however, was not without its casualties. Crazy Beast lies defeated, and the rest of the Goblin bikers are nowhere to be seen. Hopefully we'll get some kind of epilogue that shows what happened to him. I'd hate for them to exit the story so abruptly. There's also one more interesting detail. The paws of Sinful Spoils Silvera are now draped around Diabellze, an act that has presumably saved her from her fate as Snake Eyes' doomed dragon when combined with the powers of Morion. Unfortunately, this leaves Diabellstar with only Ursiella, one single Sinful Spoil. Saint Azamina takes no time converting the new, defenseless Diabellstar into her new pawn. If Doomed Dragon would not serve her, there would be another more fitting to execute her final plan. Diabellstar was absorbed with Ursiella into the feral Poplar Dragon, creating a green, black, and red monstrosity of unimaginable might. And to make matters worse, the arrival of even more Sinful Spoils meant the power at Saint Azamina's fingertips grew even further, ascending beyond sainthood and encroaching upon the realm of the gods themselves. Azamina, seated atop an auspicious floating throne, her wooden vines transformed into golden ones still brimming with thorns, a punishment for those who would encroach upon the first sin. and behind her hung the Eye, the eternal Eye that watches over all things. It was on the fruit of the forest. It was the shape of the hallowed Azamina. It was at the core of Diabell's power, and of course, the one that has been with us since the very beginning, the Snake Eye of the original sin. An eye that is always watching, always judging. Upon this golden throne, with eternal eye unfurled, she grasps the fruit of the forest, perhaps in preparation to start this tragic story anew. The fruit would birth a new forest, and new magical practitioners would be lured inside, looking for a safe place to live and hone their craft, only to find that they had already been living within the trap this entire time. And while it may seem far-fetched that this is the beginning of a new cycle, remember that Yu-Gi-Oh! Stories thrive on the idea of cyclical trauma. What happened once shall happen again, a process that we have seen in Dual Terminal, in Draco Slayer, and even Visas. But there is evidence for this even within our own story. Cast your mind back to the original Snake Eyes monsters. Ash, Birch, Oak, Poplar. It seems strange that the names of trees were associated with a fire pyro archetype. But if one considers that this used to be another coven of magical practitioners, whose forest may have been burned down either by a populace that was wary of their existence, or as an attempt to stop another Azamina uprising before it could begin, it makes a lot more sense. In fact, as Snake Eye is the original Sinful Spoil, a creature that spurred Azamina into her future evolutions, I think I'm on the right track here. But within the sight of this eternal, oppressive observation lies the key to breaking such a cycle. The agents of the Azamina have created the Sinful Spoils. To them, sin was theirs to identify, and in doing so, this gave them power over it. But of what sins are these people guilty of? Compassion? Determination? Sacrifice? Love? The Azamina have decided the nature of these people's souls all this time, but for no longer. It is these people who have clawed their way through hardship and woe to determine the value of their own spirits. And to deny the Azamina their judgment is to deny them everything. Deep within the recesses of Snake Eye's Execute Dragon, Diabellstar comes face to face with a familiar companion, Poplar, wrapped in the dark vines of the Azamina, but not as she once knew him. Having absorbed the powers of both Diabellstar and Diabellze, Poplar's Snake Eye sigil was now possessed of the combined might of the old mistress of the White Forest, shining both green and purple, both black and white. And it is with that power, passed on by an old master and given new life with the bonds of friends and lovers, Diabellstar would no longer let Azamina hold sway over what was and was not sin. This was something she would adjudicate herself. After all, Poplar was the sinful spoil of subversion. What better way to turn this power dynamic on its head? Emerging triumphantly from Execute Dragon and under Poplar's protection, Diabellstar the Sin Adjudicator combined their power with Diabellze the White Witch, having fully embraced her powers once again as a disciple of the White Forest, and with their might, with the will to overturn a creature of ancient, deep-seated loathing and darkness, caused the deified Azamina at the cusp of their ultimate power to crumble and evaporate, consumed in light. Diabellze had, in a way, cursed her disciples to live in a world of sadness and fear. Now, that same fate was imposed on Azamina, and in the face of the trials that Esteller and Elzette was forced to shoulder, the elusive god faltered. In the aftermath, the two witches say goodbye to the ghosts of their family. Even in the face of victory, the dead could not be returned. But one last miracle still avails them. One last chance for the mentors to share how proud they are. One last moment for the queen of the forest to cradle her disciples. One last, fleeting, ephemeral instant where reconciliation can be found. And then, silence. And this is where the story ends. At least for now. The White Forest has returned to how it once was, without a single red fruit to be seen. There are those who say that two witches who look after the trees and the wildlife live among them, and while the trees grow tall and the shade is plentiful, it is a land where darkness holds no sway. Should you find these witches as you travel through the lands, pay your respects and show kindness, and you shall be treated as such in turn. And if you're lucky, and you keep a very good eye out, then hidden among the alabaster branches, a small crimson creature may catch your eye. Is it a scion of the red fruit, or a mischievous familiar? Not even this storyteller knows. But perhaps that is for the best. One last mystic mystery for the White Forest. Everyone, thank you all again for walking through this lore together with me once again. While I don't find myself talking about lore as often as I would like, make no mistake that these are some of my favorite videos to make, and I'm excited to see what Duelist Advance has in store for us. Will we see more Sinful Spoils stories? Will a new lore series make its debut, perhaps around these strange new Dominus cards? Or will we return to an old favorite? Only time will tell, but hopefully, no matter what it is, I'll see you there as we enjoy the stories that only Yu-Gi-Oh! Can tell in its own special way. Today's episode is brought to you by Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales that even come with their own lore, and save 5% on your order by using the coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. It was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commanders, Upstairs Media, and the Critic of Innocence, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, 50 Gigabytes, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Ancient Wizard, Andrew Newman, Battle Axe, Kane Senpai, Charlie Mercury, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Comrade Copperbottom, Eric, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Great Big Pillock, Hair Bear, Happy Majin, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Carp, Marion James E. Picata, Mike Cook, Millennia Asta, Muse Clark, Neon Yami Nair, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Bactboos, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sonic 21 Blast, Thievery Coast and the Wizard Moose, Cosmic Crusaders Ally Vatnia, Animasta, Anthrak, Baden von Titty Sprinkles, Beelzephyr, Fish, Beluga Masta, Blitzwolf, Charlie Mercury, again, Chaz Ghost, Dr. Entity RIP, Eva Padilla, Gary Lickbread, Hike Boyagian, Herbal D, Inblink, Kale the Dragon, Lobomaru02, Manga Pages, Natiel Lee Alexander, Nitromo, Not Al Gore, Nyx, Obsidian, Pombo, Rain, Rhyme Kairos, Shizuka Nijimura, Sir Knight JCB, Sophie, apparently, Sphilia, Stephen Williamson, The Legendary Raven, The Phantom Knights of Shitted Pants, The Gene, Tiger X2476, Weasel King of Weaseltown and Zal Jareka, as well as all the lovely Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits and other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you check out the link to my Patreon in the description or consider joining as a YouTube member. And if you'd like to take this journey from the beginning, check out this video covering Snake Eyes. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.